Tourism is booming in Thailand. As a popular long-haul holiday destination, this year it expects around 39 million visitors. With this record number, the Southeast Asian country returns to pre-COVID pandemic level. The Thai economy relies heavily on this tourism sector. To compete with neighboring countries like Malaysia and Vietnam, the Thai Ministry of Tourism is launching an international campaign to attract more visitors to the South Asian nation. However, against the backdrop of this multi-million campaign, the downside of this flourishing sector is gradually becoming visible, with harmful consequences for people, environment and image. Popular beach destinations like Phuket and Pattaya are bursting at the seams, struggling to handle the hundreds of thousands of tourists. This is partly due to inadequate infrastructure in and around the cities, such as roads, airports and water supply. Besides the large influx of Chinese tourists, Thailand is also experiencing a flow of migrants from conflict zones, such as Myanmar and Russian refugees. The environment and local communities are about to suffer from over-tourism. At the annual conference of the Collective Asian Holiday Destinations, these effects are acknowledged and emergency plans are being sought. Peter Simone, chairman of the international tourism organization Pacific Asia Travel Association.
More and more we're dealing with a situation across Southeast Asia which is challenging. I'm very familiar with Bali, with Indonesia. It's really suffering from over-tourism, and the infrastructure isn't able to support it, and it's really starting to frustrate the local community. So I think that Bali's a really good example that's probably on par with places like Barcelona and Venice.
For its action plan, the Thai Ministry of Tourism is drawing lessons from the policy of popular European destinations such as Venice, Barcelona, Paris and Amsterdam, where the negative effects of cities and local populations have been evident for some time.
I think the Thais have recognized in places like Pattaya, in places like Phuket, that they are on the brink of suffering from over-tourism. And so therefore they've been very smart about it, and they've started to say, we've got to disperse to secondary and tertiary destinations. So I think that they're trying to mitigate it before it really becomes a big problem. But they're right on the edge, some of those places in Thailand.
There's a lot of Thai communities. They're very adverse to over-tourism. They've worked hard to implement sustainable practices such as zero waste, becoming a zero waste community, or 100% renewable energy, achieved those goals already, and accepting large group tours, specifically they said holding signs. They don't want that because people just show up, take pictures, create more trash and then leave. They are very adverse to that. They said that they really want the immersive aspect, the middle ground, the sustainable pathway to tourism, because they're aware of just how fragile their ecosystems are and their local economy, and they only want to accept or work with the tourism industry in such a way that it's sustainable for their local economy. I think it's the local communities that have the wisdom and understand the intricacies of how their local communities work, so I think it's so important to listen to them.
People want to travel, and destinations want travelers to come to their destination. And it is imperative that destinations take note of this and also learn from the mistakes of other destinations. So when we talk about destinations, we need to look at the physical capacity and also the social capacity of that destination, how many tourists it can support before we see that retaliation or retribution from the locals, right?
Phuket did such a great job marketing itself, but its infrastructure was not ready to handle this level of tourism. There's only one road around the island. They're building another highway or overpass, but that's going to take about 3 years, and during that time that zone will be really congested. Phuket is flooding, so as there's more building, the real estate boom, for example, the land is sinking, it's flooding worse. So sometimes there have been a lot of instances where travelers couldn't get to the airport airport because there's one airport around the island and it floods, and there's one road around the island. It floods, you miss your flight. You know, people here would like to have more tourists. It's good for the economy, but once it comes, is their province ready? And I think what's so important is the model in terms of developing a destination. They say that preparing a local community to receive tourists is a 3 to 5 year process. So that means integrating, you know, helping them to have the language capabilities, making their products marketable so it's palatable to a modern audience, having the, you know, infrastructures in place to accept and receive, you know, tourists in whatever format.
To evaluate the flow of tourism and reduce the pressure on beach destinations like Pattaya and Phuket, alternative destinations are being urgently sought, and one of them is the relatively undeveloped coastal province of Phetchaburi, located south from Bangkok, which is now being brought into the spotlight.
We try to prioritize items based on our long-term strategy and short-term strategy, and that primarily dictates the direction in which we want to go as an organization, and also how we can act as a catalyst for tourism industry in Asia Pacific and beyond.
So we're trying to reinvent the way that people think about sustainability. One of the things that we're doing, and you'll see this much more in the future, we're talking more about meaningful tourism. And what I mean by meaningful tourism is that we're talking about how do you balance, let's say, the triple bottom line. How are we going to work on the environment? How are we going to ensure that there's economic contribution to the communities? And how are we going to protect natural and cultural heritage, tangible and intangible heritage? So very much about meaningful tourism. It's beyond just looking at tourism as earning money, but it has to be more than that. It has to contribute positively and in a meaningful way to communities.